say, kids, what time is it?
The future is coming on, it's coming on, it's coming.
And here we are on Election Day. A beautiful day. Beautiful, beautiful day in the mountains here. Except that we've been given a red flag warning. You know, you think it wasn't enough just to think about the elections, you know, which is a big deal, and we're going to talk about them to some extent in the show. But we have a red flag warning in the mountains, meaning high danger of fire.
Oh.
Yeah. Especially there's some winds coming up. PG&E is thinking of turning off the grid.
We had a couple of...
This evening, possibly before the polls close.
At least an hour of rain yesterday.
That's the day before yesterday.
Oh, day before yesterday. I suppose
it's still very dry. It was the first one of the season. It just kind of...
Yeah. We haven't had any water since summer.
Patina of wetness on everything, but it went quickly.
All right. So there could be a big fire on election day.
No. A fire on the election day. No, that's not right.
It won't happen.
No.
Come on, the consciousness of this beautiful state.
Yes.
Let's have everything turn up roses
here in Boulder Creek, which is probably the most redneck part of Santa Cruz County. You know, this is where guns are normal, relatively speaking, compared to our towny friends. Any event, here we are, and we're going to spend a little bit of time going over some of the election issues that we think are important and a number of stories that are definitely at the top of our list today. Joining us is, as usual, is
Bobby Wilder.
Yes, Bobby Wilder.
We're going to have to get you some notes, honey.
Me, I don't use no teleprompters. I'm sorry.
Can't quite remember who our...
no, I do. I know. How can I forget
our
Bobby?
Science researcher.
It shows to me that names are a different part of the brain than what we know about somebody.
Yeah.
It's like another buffer.
I imagine that your sleep was a little disturbed last night.
Oh, yeah. I have great excuses for memory issues. No problem. But names, yeah, a lot of people have problems with names, and it is a different part of the brain. I'm convinced of it. Probably needs different minerals and things to keep yourself healthy. Your memory part of your brain has to do with names.
Yeah.
So Bobby's here, and so is Son.
And so are you.
And so am I.
Alan.
That's right.
That's right. At our post every Tuesday for a couple of hours of ruminating on the now, the then, the ultimate, what will be.
Yeah, and I noticed that besides the usual things on your computer, you were listening to Joe Rogan.
Sure.
This morning.
I haven't been as much of a Joe Rogan fan as I've always been an Elon fan. And, of course, I'm one of those people who is getting most of my information from X these days.
Uh-huh.
Although, of course, I'm looking everywhere.
What was your takeaway with Joe and Elon today?
They're very steady state. They're who they are, who they've always been. They have a lot of intelligent things to say. They really believe that the Democratic Party accuses Trump of what they themselves are doing, and that nothing that he's done actually resembles the things he's being accused of, and that there's a lot of lawfare and all kinds of dirty tricks being used, and that they're really hoping for a landslide because, as Elon has put it many times, if Trump doesn't win this election, he believes that we'll become a one-party country, and there goes our democracy, because they'll just basically stop using the Constitution, erode our rights, change us into a population that does what we're told instead of tells the government what we think.
Yeah, so he really sees it as an inflection point.
That's
right?
why he got involved. He said he's never been involved in politics until now, but he really believes that because of all of the dirty tricks that are used to swing the election, that this is our last chance. And I kind of feel that way. I feel like there has been a very organized effort for decades to game the elections and to take control away from the people, and that maybe this really is the last round. So, at some point in this podcast, Elon also talked about what it takes to be somebody who's really good at gaming. Elon is one of the top 20 players in the world at one of his favorite games, which I'm not familiar with games. So
he started with Doom, though. Remember Doom? Those are the old games.
Yeah.
Quake.
Well, anyway, he's one of the top 20 players in the world in this game that he plays recreationally to ease his mind. And they had a great conversation about how the complete focus that it requires to play a game and win when it's really complex and there's a lot of things getting your attention shows you whether or not you're at peak performance or not. And that for people like Elon Musk and probably people like Donald Trump, you exercise your competitiveness and that clears your decks. It's a way of just simplifying what you're paying attention to. So, I mean, I'm adding Trump to that, but they were talking about that earlier in the broadcast.
Okay. I think that those two guys' relationship's very special. I like to tune into it every so often.
Yeah. Yeah, they're buddies.
Yeah.
Alphas.
Yeah.
Both of them.
Of course, I have another friend who thinks that they're just putting out disinformation.
Yeah, well, people have their own filters. People hear what they want to hear. I have a very difficult time listening to people who demonize Trump or demonize Musk or demonize RFK or demonize Joe Rogan. For me, I hear those people and I feel like I understand what they're saying and they're very truthful and my sensibilities match them. I don't feel like I'm being lied to. I don't feel like they're twisting the truth to try and make me believe something that isn't true. Whereas when I listen to the other side, I constantly feel like they're taking things out of context, repeating things that are not true in a way that gets people riled up. And then you hear people taking that distortion and acting as if that's true. And I'm very offended by the fact that a whole election is being decided on a bunch of distorted lies.
That's terrible. All right, how about this? I think this is where Elon reflects your sensibilities on that.
Go out and vote. Vote like your life depends on it. Vote like your future depends on it, because it does. This is the last chance, man.
Is there any argument against this? Has anybody tried to debate this? Has anybody tried to say that this is nonsense, this is a conspiracy? Has anybody made any sort of a rational argument?
The left actually, interestingly, does not want to pick up much on this argument, because the more you look at it, the more obviously it is true. Say like, well, are the numbers correct? Are there really this many illegals that have been imported into swing states? Yes. They haven't just walked across the border. They've been flown in.
325,000.
Flown in airplanes.
Since
Using a shipping app.
just the last administration.
Yeah.
They made an app.
Well, the app always existed, but it used to be for people coming over here, like shipping with goods, so they could track you while you're in America, so you could legally be here, they know where you are. And then they changed it to allow that app to schedule illegal aliens to come across the border.
Yes.
Asylum seekers.
Yes.
Come on in.
Yes.
Oh, you have an app. And you
don't
fly
even,
people in.
They're literally being flown in to the swing states. So the reason that I think the left doesn't want to push back on this is because the more attention this gets, the more people will realize it is true.
Yeah, it is true.
That's why they're just pretending they're pretending I'm not saying anything. I'm like, yo, they're literally flying vast numbers of illegals who are then beholden to the Democrats. Sometimes I get the rebuttal of people say like, well, they don't have the same social values as the Democrat Party because they're like more socially conservative. I'm like, yeah, but that's not the point. If you look at the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, their primary thing is staying in the country and getting their friends and family in, and then the Democrats give them all these benefits, like tons of benefits, more benefits than citizens.
Okay, there you go. I think you get the gist of that. That is a pretty devious little plan, if that's indeed what is going on.
Well, that's the case that they've been making for quite some time. Like, why... If you start getting into immigration and intelligent people talking about America and immigration, America is a country of immigrants. We love our immigrants. And in this modern era, both the conservatives and the non-conservatives have a vested interest in having more immigrants in the country because their wages are lower, and thus that allows their jobs to be less costly to the people that are trying to make a profit. And in terms of voting issues, 2020 was a census year. So the big push for having control of the vote in 2020 was because after a census, voting districts are redrawn. And there's redistricting going on. And there's all kinds of gerrymandering that happens, and the party that's in charge gets to call the shots. So if you start with the gerrymandering from 2020, And then look at the persecution of Trump, the outsider, in that election, so that in 2024, they want to control the election because now that these districts are just these last few swing states, they want those last few swing states to have so many Democrats that there's never another question.
Just sort of stacking it with people that will vote for your side.
Yeah. It's all about gaming the system.
And is that true? I guess that's what needs to be shown. Do we have a PolitiFact on that? I mean, is it true that? But would they even talk about it? Depends on who is paying the bills, I guess, is who you're loyal to.
Well, one thing inside of free speech is it's less important whether it's true or not than that you just be allowed to think about it and speak your mind and wonder if it's true and search to find evidence.
Right.
That's what makes freedom work. The fact that anybody who wants to can look into it.
Yeah, well, according to what Elon's saying, it should be so obviously true that's why you're not supposed to look at it. That's why it's being swept under the rug.
Well, he's making the case, and I think he's a smart guy. It's certainly an interesting perspective. It's like, don't look over here, look over there. Well, we know they do that all the time. Is this one of the pet issues that they're supposed to not talk about? Could be.
Could be, yeah, could be.
Misdirection is definitely one of those skills that the propagandists of the world seem to master.
That's right, yeah. Let's see how the geek minds track reality here.
What's your geek story?
This has to do with hybrid creatures and creating hybrid creatures involving human stem cells and monkeys and mice. I turned it over to our AI buddies, and they did a 3-minute piece on it, which I think is...
Oh, so this is the Larry and Mary report.
This is Larry and Mary report.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
And what did you ask them?
Because this is their AIs. I thought since humans are dabbling with DNA and combining it in new and interesting ways, that they should look at that, since they're a kind of a way in which human has been dabbling with intelligence in new and interesting ways.
Okay.
And here's what they came up with, Larry and Mary.
All right, everybody, let's dive into something pretty wild today.
Yeah, it should be a fun one.
We're talking human-animal hybrids. I mean, it sounds like science fiction.
It really does.
But we've got two sources here. One, a report about scientists who created a human-monkey hybrid embryo.
Wow.
And then another study about injecting human brain cells into mice.
Yeah, I read about that one. That's fascinating.
So what are the implications of this? Where does this all lead? What are the good things? What are the things we need to be cautious about?
Right. Where do we draw the line? What's ethical?
Exactly.
And it's happening now. This isn't like the future. This is now.
Well, let's start with that human-monkey embryo. I mean, that's pretty out there. Scientists are actually combining human stem cells, with monkey embryos.
Yeah.
What's the point of doing something like that?
Well, it sounds crazy, but really what they're trying to do is understand the earliest stages of human development. And by doing that, I mean, it's pretty amazing to think about. But like growing human organs in a lab.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
To be ready for transplant. I mean, imagine like no more organ donor shortages.
Yeah, would be incredible.
It would completely change healthcare.
Yeah. I mean, I've got to ask, though, like, is this ethical?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Mixing human and animal cells? I mean, come on. Are we playing God a little bit here?
That's the debate, right? I mean, what happens if these embryos develop beyond just the early stages?
Right.
What kind of rights would they have? And then, there's always the animal welfare side of things.
Oh, absolutely.
We have to be careful with that.
Yeah, lots to think about.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about that study with the mice.
Okay.
They were given human brain cells, and they basically got, like, super smart.
Yeah.
I mean, that's wild.
It's pretty incredible. So they were focusing on these cells, glial cells, which, they're kind of like support structures in your brain.
Oh.
And what really surprised them was how seamlessly these human cells integrated into the mouse brains. And they even like outperformed the mouse's own cells in some areas.
So wait, are you telling me there's like millions of human brain cells in these mice running around?
Yeah, something like 12 million human cells. It's crazy. It's like something out of Frankenstein, right?
It is a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, where does this go from here? What's the real-world application of this?
Well, think about it. I mean, studying brain diseases like Alzheimer's,
Right.
we could study those in a living organism in a way that we've never been able to before.
Wow.
I mean, that's huge for developing treatments.
So it's interesting. We've got, on one hand, potential to save lives.
Right.
Organ transplants, understanding the brain, maybe even curing some of these diseases.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, we're kind of blurring the lines, you know?
We are, yeah.
What does it even mean to be human at this point?
Well, that's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, we can enhance intelligence.
Yeah.
Even in mice, what does that mean? What's our responsibility towards animals then, if we can do things like that?
Yeah. Wow.
It's heavy stuff, but it's so interesting.
It is. So everybody listening, I mean, we're talking about science that's really on the cutting edge.
It is.
It's a potential to change the world,
Yeah.
you know? But we've got to think about the ethics here.
For sure.
I mean, what do you guys think? Leave us your comments. Tell us what you're thinking about all this.
There you go. And that's Larry and Mary with their report.
Asking us to tell them about the ethics of
What
this.
do we think?
Yeah. Well, Planet of the Apes comes to mind.
You know what it reminds me of? The band Devo.
Yeah.
And
We are Devo, D-E-V-O.
they were actually film students in the late 60s, early 70s in Kent State, the Kent State massacre, right?
Yeah, yeah.
They were thinking about, well, what is de-evolution? We have de-evolved over time. When I was in film school, I studied, there was a class at Berkeley, it was on French film, and we were looking at this film. It was called The Island of Dr. Moreau.
Yeah. Yeah, classic.
And I realized these guys, these Devo band,
Yeah.
they had seen this film and they got this idea of de-evolution from The Island of Dr. Moreau. They had a song, Are We Not Devo? There was one lyric in their songs, Are We Not Devo? And it's actually taken out of the movie of Island of Dr. Moreau, where this doctor injects the serum in these animals and they evolve very quickly into bipeds, human-like people, but they still have hair maybe of a cat or a dog or whatever, but they can walk and talk like humans. And then toward the end of the film, what happens was all of them get together and they kind of revolt and they all say, are we not men?
Are we not men?
Oh.
Men,
No.
huh? Huh.
Yeah, that was in the movie. Are we not men? So that's how we got Devo saying, are we not Devo?
Yeah. So who gets to decide? I think that the current generation is the only one that can make any kind of assessment of what is ethical or not. We cannot know for 10,000 years in the future if our choices have consequences that we can't foresee, whether we can know if it was ethical or not.
Well, one of the things I wonder is that they say that to tamper with nature is not a good idea. And we've seen time and time again how that can backfire on us, like the mongoose in Hawaii or
Right.
kudzu in the South.
Right.
And yet at the same time, the more I've looked into science and I've seen that nature is a rampant experimentress. And she's doing all kinds of experiments all the time. And many of them fail and others don't, and they continue to evolve. So as humankind and our desire to tinker with her, just what nature is doing anyway in other realms. Mm-hmm. And the ethics, well, I think what makes the most sense to me there is that if we pay attention to the larger ecosystems that we're impacting as best as we can.
Well, for instance, I always like to bring up the story of the proposal to modify the mosquitoes in New Zealand. And the relevant city or island governments, the relevant national government was consulted because there was a proposal where they would get a lot of money to eradicate mosquitoes by doing experimental gene modification that would sterilize the males.
They couldn't replicate.
And cause them not to replicate. And in New Zealand, they declined to accept that level of experimentation because it was not in alignment with natural evolution. So their thinking about it was very aware of the fact that messing with the genome changes our evolutionary clock in ways that we can't necessarily know. So in that case, they decided that since nature didn't do it, neither would they. So
until nature does it, until she comes around eventually.
Well, nature created the scientists who want to do these experiments, and they're certainly doing those experiments in other places.
Yeah.
And they're either doing them without getting permission, or they're doing them in ways that are somewhat governed by people who feel that the gain is worth the risk.
Mm-hmm. My guess is that we'll have way more permission to play with these variables once we're a space-faring civilization. And we're away from this planet, and we're running into other planets that have very little life, if any at all. And that it's grounds for us to experiment and to see what we can create to create life there.
So as long as we don't pollute our own planet, we're free to experiment in spaceships out in the vast beyond.
Well, the importance about this planet is that it's the gold standard. It's showing life as it is, how it works and how it's unfolding. And that's what we learn from primarily rather than tinker with.
Mm-hmm.
But once we go out into the vastness of the universe, especially to realms where there's literally no life, and it's up to us to have some there, then where we have to create entire ecosystems, that's when it really becomes important to learn the lessons of nature. When we're actually having to create it ourselves.
Well, there's always a dilemma when you are trying to change what exists with something that is unknown.
Yeah.
Right.
That's where a tabula rasa is really good. Mm-hmm. Some might argue that the universe is not a tabula rasa. It already has delicate ecosystems of all kinds, just they don't involve biological life. And you could make a case for that. But I think there's plenty of room for us to experiment and to see for ourselves what happens when we play with nature.
Yes. Well, nature takes care of babies, right? Nature takes care of rocks.
Shamanically, it's important to stay in touch with your direct connection with nature as well, and not just think of yourself as a crazy human doing experiments just to see what happens. I think another big ethics is to stay in touch with your direct connection with nature.
Are we not men? We are Devo. Are we not men? DVO. Are we not kids? We are Devo.
Located in Scotts Valley, Steel Bonnet Brewing Company is a family-owned brewery and taproom that focuses on creating delicious English, Scottish, and American ales. We are open every day and offer food trucks and live music on the weekends. With both indoor and outdoor seating, the brewery is the perfect spot to relax with your favorite drinks and loved ones. Bring your furry or human family members, as we are dog and kid-friendly. Swing by the taproom at 20 Victor Square off Scotts Valley Drive, or visit steelbond.net for more information.
Deer fins, wood fins, livestock chain link, vinyl, iron fins, Cypress Coast fence, Cypress Coast fence.
My name is Stephen Bigger. My wife and I live in Royal Oak. When my wife and I were looking to find someone to build our fence, Cypress Coast Fence was highly recommended. It was amazing. These folks are masters at their craft. They're super professional. They came in when they said they were going to come in. They finished when they said they were going to finish. The fence is perfect for our needs, everything they said it was going to be, and then some.
Give us a call for your no-obligation consultation at 831-783-1500 or at cypresscoastfence.com.
We don't just build fences, we make good neighbors.
Deer fins, wood fins, livestock chain link, vinyl, iron fins, Cypress Coast fence, Cypress Coast fence.
The Hook is California's first ever cannabis outlet. 100% locally owned and operated, we're here to be your friendly neighborhood hookup. We believe that everyone should have access to fairly priced cannabis, so we work hard to get it to you for 30 to 50% less than the other guys. If you're 21 or older with a valid ID, visit us in Capitola or in Watsonville today. We're here to be your friendly neighborhood hookup. Check out our website, hookoutlet.com, for deals and stay groovy.
Do you expect a crowd at your precinct there, Bobby?
I heard there's a lot of early voting.
So maybe not.
Yeah. So years ago, yes, I used to have to stand in line and wait to get to vote late, like at 7:30, just before the polls closed. But lately, no. I think a lot of people vote early.
What I've noticed is that the one that we got in the mail is something you can fill out, and then you can go down there and they can just get it certified in the drop box and get registered as in the same way as it would be counted as if you had just gone in and filled up a ballot there. So you can bring your ballot to the station, the polling station, and they'll take it, and it'll get counted as a ballot of that day.
So we have our voting ballots with us. We can just go and drop them off.
Right. They said not to put it in an envelope. They'll do that part of it there.
Right. So they count the ones that are in the envelope in the machine at the
they'll count
polling
it there.
station.
So if you want to fill it out at home and then go down and then do that part of it.
That's much easier than 4 years ago.
Okay, so one of the things that was interesting was all the propositions that are coming out. I would just
we
briefly
had a
touch
lot of
upon
fun
that for a moment.
Familiarizing ourselves with the propositions without going through the mind-bending gobbledygook that's written in the ballot, that's written in the booklet that you get to understand the ballot, which I don't know. I do try and read those. I did read through the entire pros and cons of at least 3 of the ballot initiatives. But then we found calmatters.org, which did a really good job of summarizing the ballot initiatives and why they were on the ballot from the perspective of our government and giving us a little more insight to why those measures are there. And I thought that was very helpful.
Yeah, calmatters.org.
Yeah. And we thought we'd play some of these 1-minute videos in case people haven't voted early and are wondering why these ballot initiatives are there. Are there any in particular ones that you're wondering about?
One, they're looking for billions of dollars for elementary school.
$10 billion, which will cost us $16 billion over time through bond.
California schools are falling apart. Roofs are leaking, air conditioners are broken, and electrical systems are outdated. In fact, 38% of students go to schools that don't meet the state's minimum safety standards. The state's fund to fix these schools, it's practically empty. I'm Carolyn Jones, K-12 reporter for Cal Matters, and this is Prop 2 in a minute. California does not have a permanent funding source for school repairs. School districts rely on money from state and local bonds. Larger and more affluent districts can raise money locally, but many other school districts rely on the state for that money. That's because they can't raise enough or any funds locally to cover the cost of the repairs. Proposition 2 would raise $10 billion for facility improvements. $8.5 billion would go to K-12 schools, and $1.5 billion would go to community colleges. Proponents say this money is crucial to fix California's crumbling schools, especially because the last state school facilities bond in 2020 failed. Opponents say the state, not taxpayers, should be paying for these repairs. Others question whether the fund distribution would be equitable. They'd like to see lower-income districts get a larger share of the funds. So vote yes if you'd like to see the state borrow $10 billion to repair school facilities. Vote no if you don't.
So
there you go.
I think that's really super clear.
Yeah.
Now, when you read the ballot booklet, it goes into a lot more details about what's normal in the past and how the bonds have been issued and how much has been issued. There's over $100 billion in current debt that has been issued for the schools, and they habitually run a new bond to pay for this kind of thing. And because they didn't succeed in 2020, they're trying again, and they'll keep trying until something breaks.
I ask, what is the future of our schools? Are we going to continue with these same kind of brick and mortar buildings for the kids with classrooms? Is that really the future? Classrooms?
Probably, because in the sense that more parents are working than ever before, I think that parents really appreciate having some time while the kids are learning and spending time in school where the parents can be taking care of other things. So I think that the desire to have locations for kids to go to school is not going to go away just because education can be provided through our information systems. If anything, the schools will be the learning centers where that information is delivered.
Yeah, I just think that the whole idea of personalized education, like personalized medicine, is going to change the edifices in which we practice these forms of education or medicine.
And I think it has already.
I think it is. It is evolving.
Individual learning is more of the after-school form of continuing education. but there's still a desire to give kids especially a solid foundation that allows them to then do their own individual learning.
And is this the best use of $10 billion for education to fix the buildings?
Yeah. I wasn't able to, I don't remember, they may have said how much that comes down to per taxpayer. I just paid my property taxes, and I know that there's a couple of line items on the property tax bill that is already going to schools. So my concern when I get bills like this is it seems to me they're always asking for money for the schools, and then they do a bait and switch where they take the money and they put it in a general fund, and then you don't know how it comes back. But of course, I'm not in government, so I don't really know the details. That's the hard part, is only the people in government know how to spend the money that's in the government.
And our podcast update, Proposition 2 for public school bonds wins with 57% of the vote, as opposed to the no votes of 43%. That's yes with 5,294,722 versus no 4,013,353. We've got a question from Gregory on Proposition 33.
Uh-huh.
Yes, Proposition 33. That's the one about landlords. We see the news all the time. Nonstop ads. Vote no on 33 all over YouTube.
Yeah.
Constantly.
So I haven't read that one. In fact, I've only looked at the 1-minute video on that one. I'd love to hear what Greg has to say about it.
Proposition 33 had over $200 million spent to oppose it from large corporations, out-of-state landlords, and greedy in-state apartment and home renters designed to frighten Californians. Yeah, it seems to be the kind of bill where if you're a landlord, you're going to vote no. And if you want rent control, you're going to vote yes.
Most people want rent control, I think.
Well, most people are tenants.
Most people are tenants, right?
Okay, here we go.
The rent is too damn high. You've likely heard that refrain as millions of Californians struggle to pay. So, what should we do about it? That will be a question on your ballot this November. Hi, I'm Marisa Kendall, homelessness reporter for Cal Matters, and this is Prop 33 in a minute. Many California cities limit how much a landlord can raise rent each year. That's called rent control. 3 decades ago, lawmakers limited those limits. Basically, cities can't impose rent control on single-family homes or apartments built after 1995. That's because of a law known as Costa-Hawkins. Prop 33 would change that, letting cities impose whatever rent control they want. Sound familiar? We've been here before, twice. Similar ballot measures failed in 2018 and 2020. Supporters of Prop 33 say cities should be able to decide whether and how to cap rents. Opponents argue rent control makes rental housing less lucrative, leading to fewer homes getting built. So, vote yes if you want your city to be able to expand rent control. Vote no if you want the state to continue to limit rent control. To learn more about everything in your 2024 ballot, go to calmatters.org.
Okay, there you go. There you have it.
So it seems like you would vote yes if you want more rent control, and you would vote no if you don't
want less.
want.
You don't want. If you want to keep it the way it is.
Yeah. So landlords want no because they want more rent, and renters want yes because they want rent control from the city.
Are you a tenant or are you a landlord?
Right.
I lived in Berkeley.
Yeah.
Back in the early 90s or late 90s. It started from the 70s where they had rent control. And then they were phasing out rent control in the mid 2000s. Well, after 1997, the rent control laws were being slowly phased out. But yes, if you were a renter and you stayed in an apartment, which I did for many years, way below market price, because fortunately I had a place before that. I even went to court for the landlord because it was one of these slumlord landlords that didn't keep upkeep of the building or anything like that. So there are some advantages to that, but in the long run, it did prevent new buildings. So then the new students that were coming in, they weren't under this rent control, right? And so they would have to pay really high prices because there wasn't enough housing, because there was no incentive for builders to build housing because of this rent control law.
So it killed the entrepreneurial aspect of the business.
There are legal reasons why to do this economically. And yes, in certain places, some landlords are out of control and they control the market.
Yeah, there are always people that try to game the system, and the laws end up getting created to help control them.
Right. But then, as a landlord now, yes, I would tend not to vote in San Francisco for this rent control.
You want to have the freedom to raise the rent as you see fit.
Yeah. Only when the renter leaves can I actually bring it back up to market rate.
Really? Oh. So if you have somebody in there for 20 years, you can't...
Then you have a problem. Yes.
You have a problem.
Seems to me that
Great.
I worked as a property manager at one point in my career, and our rental increases were limited to the cost of living percentage. Like, we were not allowed to go over the cost of living, but we could go up to the cost of living. That was a way of rents keeping pace with inflation. I don't know. It would be nice if wages were forced to keep pace with the increased cost of living, so that
inflationary elements,
things like rent would not be harmful if rents increase because of cost of living.
Greg says that most people won't spend $200 million to get it passed, not rejected. It was put in play by the AIDS Healthcare Foundation to keep AIDS and cancer patients in their homes.
Mm-hmm. So what does Greg think? Does he think it's a good idea? Is he going to vote for it?
Well, being someplace with rent control for 20 years, I think he'd probably vote...
to keep it.
To keep rent control, to have more rent control.
Allow the cities
Keep the price,
to have rent control.
Cap it so they can only raise it 3% a year or something like that. One of the things that happens is that inflation happens. And yes, he said. See?
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Vote yes.
Cap it, man.
Cap it, man.
Keep those greedy landlords down.
That's right. Let them raise the rent on the new people, not the people that are already there.
Yeah.
To me, there's a logic to that, because so many people are on very fixed or very limited income, and you don't want to throw a monkey wrench in their livelihood if they're just barely making it,
Yeah. Okay, well, that's a good point. And he says it doesn't apply to single-family homes, which is where he lives.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's more of the apartmental scene.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Okay, so
All right.
There's that Proposition 33. Okay, well, that's very good. And an update on Proposition 33, rent control, which expands local government's authority to enact rent control on residential property. Well, with 52% reporting, no, 62%, yes, 38%. So no rent control is the answer. No, with 5,707,892, and yes, with 3,561,177. Any other favorite propositions?
I like the environmental climate change one, which is another $10 billion proposal that's going to be split among different county organizations. They call that one the climate bill.
Climate bond, yeah.
Okay.
Climate bond.
Okay.
This bond issue would allow the state to borrow $3.8 billion for drinking water and groundwater programs, $1.5 billion for wildfire and forest programs, and $1.2 billion for sea level rise. In part, the money would offset some budget cuts.
More intense heat waves, devastating floods, ferocious wildfires. Californians can't escape the effects of climate change. At the same time, nearly 1 million of them still don't have clean drinking water. That's why environmental groups are pushing for a surge in state funding. I'm Alejandro Lasso, climate reporter for Cal Matters, and this is Prop 4 in a minute. If a majority of voters say yes, Proposition 4 would authorize $10 billion in bonds to fund environmental and climate projects across the state. The measure would give priority to lower-income communities and those most vulnerable to climate change. The biggest chunk of bond money, $1.9 billion, would go to improving drinking water. But there's more. Money would also go to wildfire prevention and extreme heat projects, natural lands and parks, coastal protection, clean energy initiatives, and even agricultural improvements. In total, the cost to taxpayers would be $400 million a year over the next 40 years, meaning we could end up spending $16 billion in the long run, according to the state's nonpartisan legislative analysts. Why now? Well, environmental groups and renewable energy advocates have been pushing to spend more, especially after the state scaled back its original climate spending plan. Governor Gavin Newsom and the legislature approved the California climate commitment in 2022, but have since scaled it back by nearly $10 billion after the state faced a massive deficit. Supporters say the threats posed by wildfires, water pollution, and extreme heat are too urgent not to act. But opponents warn that bonds are the most expensive way for the government to pay for these projects. They argue that California should find other ways to finance these initiatives without taking on more debt.
Okay.
All right. Well,
That brings us to
give you
top
a
of the
little
hour.
taste.
Yeah. So climate change. I would like to see the beaches protected, the wildfires up here in the mountains protected. So we need to do something.
All right.
I'm glad somebody's thinking about it. Proposition 4, environmental bonds, which authorizes bonds for safe drinking water, wildfire prevention, and protecting communities and natural lands from climate risk, with 53% reporting. Yes, 58%. No, 42%. The 58% yes is 5,428,433 people, and no is 3,543,124 people. So the environmental bonds wins with 58% of the vote.
We are heading into a break, and we'll be back with the second hour in about 5 minutes after some news.
Okay, welcome back to the show. Nice to be able to go over these a little bit. You see the ads on television for all these propositions, and it's nice to actually kick them around a little bit.
Well, I like it being presented with the perspective of what initiatives like these have been proposed in the past and who's behind it, and a little bit of the perspective of the government and what they need.
Yeah. Now, on to some other stories here while we're talking about politics. There are some issues about voting from space, if you were stuck on the space station.
Well, there are a couple people stuck up there, aren't there?
There are. They hadn't planned on being up there, that's for sure.
Oh, well, do tell. Let's hear from the astronauts. What's going on?
Yeah.
Who are they voting for?
Well, you can't really ask that. That's not fair. But you can ask, how do you vote from space? How are you able to cast ballots? We can't do them electronically at home, but apparently they can. Right now, there are 4 Americans on board the ISS, the SpaceX Crew 9, Don Petit, Nick Hague, Butch Wilmore, and Suni Williams. And each has an opportunity to vote.
So you're going to play a little clip from them?
Have you requested your absentee ballots yet so you can vote from space? If you could elaborate on this. And what else are you missing on a personal note?
All right, there we go.
I sent down my request for a ballot today, as a matter of fact, and they should get it to us in a couple of weeks. And absolutely, yes, it's a very important role that we all play as citizens, is to be included in those elections, and NASA makes it very easy for us to do that. So we're excited about that opportunity.
How do they do that?
Have a paper ballot.
Marcia, same here. It's a very important duty that we have as citizens, and looking forward to being able to vote from space, which is pretty cool. You asked what we miss, right? Of course, the things that we always miss, our families. I miss my 2 dogs. I miss my friends. But you know what? Like Butch said, there are so many people on Earth that are sending us messages, and it makes you feel just right at home.
Okay.
So that was 2 weeks ago.
After an astronaut fills out their ballot, the document goes to NASA's Tracking and Data Relay satellite system to a ground antenna at the White Sands Test Facility in Las Cruces, New Mexico. And then from there, NASA transfers the ballot to the Mission Control Center at NASA Johnson, where they replicated 1 million times, and then on to the and then on to the county clerk responsible for casting the ballot. To preserve the ballot's integrity, i.e. no replication, the ballot is encrypted and accessible only by the astronaut and the clerk.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how it.
All right. So there is one electronic ballot there for sure,
NASA's
at least,
tracking
but it's
and data
encrypted.
relay. It's an encrypted ballot.
The clerk can use the internet, but nobody else in the whole election system.
That's right.
I want one of those.
Well, it does speak for the future. I mean, sooner or later, we're going to have to go there with the electronic encryption that we can trust for voting. And we certainly do it for money. We all throw a lot of money around electronically. Most of it, wouldn't you say? So why not voting?
Why not?
What makes paper ballots so much more secure?
Well, paper ballots, basically, it's a distributed process. And because of the fact that they can be collected in one place and counted and then recounted from a pile, it's fairly likely that there's some anomalies in one of those places. There won't be the same anomaly in all the places.
Yeah. Okay, now let's look at another aspect of the ballot that is interesting. I thought that Not only can you vote for Kamala and Tim Walz and Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, but you can also still vote for Robert F. Kennedy and Nicole Shanahan on the ballot.
That's right. Supposedly Kennedy got onto the ballot on all 50 states, but he was having to fight a lot of lawsuits from people trying to throw him off the ballot. So
now, the situation in California is that if you vote for Kamala, you'd be joining the masses that are doing that, and she's no doubt going to get the state already. That's why we're not a battleground state. If you vote for Trump, well, what happens? It disappears into the loser category. But from my understanding is that what happens if you vote for a third party like Robert F. Kennedy Jr., does that result in anything different other than throwing your vote away? And from what you were telling me earlier, Bobby, that actually it might play a role in possibly creating a third party. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
I was just told this a couple days ago, that if you vote for RFK Jr., then if he can get just 5% of the national vote, just 5%, then that's good enough to create a party that can be on other ballots in all other states without this legal battle that has been going on before, because this was a new party that he was creating, this third party. And so once you've established 5%, I believe that it's much easier to get on ballots like 4 years from now in all states. Then it's considered kind of...
So then you're up there with the Libertarians or the Green Party or the Peace and Freedom Party or any of those other stragglers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that'd be interesting, because it seems to me that if we had more choices, it would be better. It seems like a lot of democracies on this planet have parliaments where they have more choices than we do with two parties. Two parties seems to be a little narrow for the depth and diversity of Americans, you know? And yet the system is really locked in. And possibly it's locked in because all three branches of government have been pretty much compromised by big money from various sources. Today, the big money folks are so rich that they can buy not just Congress, they can buy the judicial and executive branch as well. And that's disturbing, you know? So maybe more parties would help distribute it. Also, it seems like most countries don't spend nearly as much money just throwing it away in a big election. How long do we have to listen to Trump versus Kamala to get to know the candidates or make up our mind? Does it take these hundreds of millions of dollars to do that? Nobody else seems to think so, except us. Why is that? If not only because it's an entrenched system. So that's what I wonder about. Perhaps voting for a third party. There are other third parties as well. If you're not a big fan of RFK, like there's Jill Stein. There's the Green Party. And there's somebody named Claudia de la Cruz that's part of the Peace and Freedom Party. There's Chase Oliver. Chase Oliver also, who's part of the Libertarian Party. And there's always the write-in. It's interesting how third parties have been so minimized in America compared to parliaments. I guess that's endemic to the structure of the system as well, at least until we find some way in which to evolve it. Some people say you need to have a constitutional amendment for this to happen, and that's almost impossible to get. And so the system is set so that it's almost impossible to change it in any significant way when it comes to having more parties represented. When that happens, and we really need to have more perspectives reflected in our government, then something more radical has to happen where the system has to break enough so that it can come together again in a more cohesive manner.
You're such an optimist.
Yeah. Well, I do think people do want to work in government, and they do want one that works well and is responsive to our needs. I mean, that's why
we have all these tools now. How come government's the last to make use of them? We have meetups, we have encryption, we have all kinds of ways that people should be able to check their own ballot and check that it makes sense, that the count is fair, right?
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to seeing it evolve.
All right. I vote for that.
Yeah. An update on RFK Jr.'s candidacy, encouraging his supporters not to vote for him. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. received nearly 594,000 votes, about 0.4% of the popular vote, but no electoral votes. So he didn't get close to 5%. He got 0.4% of the popular vote in the whole country. Also out in space, this is kind of more of a fun story. It's the world's first wood satellite has been launched. Wooden
How
satellite.
quaint. It looks like an old-fashioned gumball machine or something.
It's actually wood paneled. It's been launched into space to test the sustainability of timber as a renewable building material in future explorations of the moon and Mars. And this is a Japanese experiment.
Can we use wood on the moon?
Well, it's a tiny satellite. It weighs just 900 grams. The first stop is the ISS, the International Space Station, on a SpaceX mission. And from there, they're going to release it into a low Earth orbit above the Earth. It's called LignoSat.
Wow.
LignoSat. Ligno.
I suspect they're going to be starting to do space-based meteor showers with little satellite releases.
Space-laced meteor showers from LignoSat? You mean when LignoSat falls back into the Earth?
It's a wooden satellite.
It'll burn nice. I mean, but rocks burn nice when they kind of... As a matter of fact, it might burn
That's
so
true.
fast you might not even see it.
Yeah, you're right. What am I thinking? We won't even see it. It'll
no.
be too fast.
Too fast. But you know what kind of tree it's made out of?
Bamboo.
Magnolia.
Oh, really?
A magnolia tree.
Interesting. Why did they choose that? Does it say?
No.
Huh.
No. Kyoto University. My guess is that it's probably fairly hardwood.
That's
Yeah.
true.
It is.
It is, okay. Which is probably readily available in Japan. As well as magnolia trees in Japan.
Not so many. Mostly in Indonesia.
Indonesia. So it's a known tree for building things.
Yes, and I think they make violins or guitars out. It's a hard wood, and so yeah, they do make furniture out of it, and it lasts a long time compared
Perfect.
to.
That's what you want in space. Also, they did a traditional technique without screws or glue.
The Japanese houses traditionally they didn't use nails or screws. You know,
Really?
they
Wow.
were all joined together. I don't know if you know Masao, but he's a traditional Japanese carpenter.
Uh-huh. No, I don't
And-
know him. No, I see here in Santa Cruz.
Yes, yeah. Rachel Fresco's ex-husband.
Oh.
Right. Yeah, we
Okay.
met him a time or two.
Yeah. And so he goes around the United States building these either temples or special houses that have no nails, no screws in them. You know, it's traditional Japanese carpentry where all the woods are joined, like your music box, where there's joints, they're joined together. And they build temples out of these things, and they're earthquake resistant, and they hold up for a long time.
Well, according to Kyoto University forest science professor Koji Murata, he says, wood is more durable in space than on Earth because there's no water or oxygen that would rot or inflame it.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah. I kind of thought, well, maybe the wood would kind of dry out in space.
Brittle. Yeah, it might become very brittle.
Well, maybe dried out wood is fine. You know, I mean, a certain dry magnolia might, for what they need. Professor Murata points out that early 1900s airplanes were made out of wood. Should be feasible in space too.
Yeah.
And one day, maybe when we're planting trees on Mars, wood might be very handy for building things in the colonies up there. He also, interestingly, combines wood panels with traditional aluminum and electronics components, aluminum structures and electronic components. And he also has created some sensors on this little LignoSat to monitor how the wood reacts to the extreme environment of space in the 6 months that it will be orbiting the Earth.
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing the results of that. That's a very interesting insight to look for. How does wood fare in space?
In space, yeah. And keep in mind, the satellite is not completely made out of wood, but the basic infrastructure is.
Right.
So from a sustainability point of view, it's a material that could be grown and hence renewable.
Grow your own satellites.
Yeah.
Cool.
So growing wood on another planet? Possible.
Yeah, great. Yeah.
Possible.
So
I like it.
I like it too. It's a CubeSat. Definitely, it's a CubeSat thing. And it looks like the sides are different pieces of wood, but the printed circuit boards are definitely traditional plastic printed circuit boards inside this CubeSat.
Yeah, it looks good. And he also points out that it's not the first time that wood's been used on spacecraft, that we used wood cork on reentry on the outer shell of vessels to help them survive reentry. and that the Russian and Soviet lunar landers used cork to help the rover have a grip as it was descending to the surface. So there's nothing wrong with wood in space. It's the right material for many things. But they also point out that wood has some properties that are hard to control. From an engineering point of view, it's quite difficult to work with compared to metal. Wood is going to have a problem when you need to predict how strong it's going to be in certain circumstances. But I guess you use it for where you don't need a lot of strength. They also think it'd be less polluting. I wonder if the increasing threat of space junk, if it hit a wooden satellite, would break more easily.
Yeah. Paper, scissors, stone, huh?
Right.
The paper would be the loser.
Yeah. Well, wood would burn up more easily than all the metal. And you might just end up taking more material with you in the first place just to burn it up on the way down.
Bonfires in space.
Could it be that developing wooden satellites is a good way to cut down on space junk?
I like it, Al. I like it. Definitely thinking out of the box there.
Well,
out
that's
of the wooden box.
Japanese
Innovation.
I discovered the Dwarf 3.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
The Dwarf 3 telescope.
I'm a smart telescope.
This is great.
Yeah. It doesn't look like a normal telescope at all. It looks more like a 2 by 1 foot rectangle with a cylinder on top. And the cylinder rotates, tracking the sky. And also airplanes and whatever else you want. A wide angle and a zoom lens in the cylinder.
I say it looks like a square robot happy face.
But it's got two, I guess the equivalent of two eyes.
Lenses.
Right? Two lenses.
Like
right?
binocular lenses.
Right. Not like a tube like most telescopes. No tube. This is more of a rectangular structure.
Mm-hmm.
It's called the Dwarf 3. It looks at the sky and it photographs not just the stars, which it does really well, but the sun, the moon. It does wildlife. It'll even get distant nebulae and galaxies, and it will do it automatically. It'll just find the galaxy you're interested in. It'll then do a series of time exposures that add up. It will do 30-second exposures. It's able to stack the images, they call it, stack time-lapse images one on top of the other, so you can create a nice little super long exposure and compensate for the fact that you have a very small little telescope rather than a very large one. And it'll get this beautiful image as a result just by stacking time images. And it has an equatorial mount, so the stars don't blur as the Earth moves.
Right. It compensates for the rotation of the planet.
Right. It has the proper celestial mount to keep that stable. And it also connects up wirelessly to an app on your phone or your tablet, and in the process can also go to big screens so that you can show it off to other people around you as it's doing its thing. And the whole thing gives these most incredible photographs of the universe for $500. $500. I mean, that's cheaper than just about any decent telescope out there.
Yeah, to get the same kind of features that this thing can do, it would cost thousands of dollars.
Oh, yeah. And big. It would be much. This thing can fit in your backpack.
Right, yes. You can just put it, and you can control it with your phone.
Right.
And to be able to do stacking of these images, which it does a very refined image after you stack them, and it cuts out all the noise in between the images.
Yes.
Normally you had to take that into a different program and process it, and then, it took a lot of time, but here it just does it on its own, which is amazing.
I remember when we first got our Celestron a few years ago that we took a bunch of Celestron timed images and just trying to match them up to account for the fact that the stars were in different places every time we took another picture was horrible. It was really
takes so much time.
painstaking.
Yeah, and the Celestron had the advanced 3-star tracking system, which was all about making it easy. It's supposed to make it easy. You identify 3 objects in space. That doesn't include one of the planets, but 3 stars. And then later you could include one of the planets or the moon, and then it would be able to tell you where everything else was. Well, with the Dwarf 3, it automatically looks at the sky and figures out where everything is without you having to know anything, which I thought was perfect because it's going to raise the general level of astrocartography out of the realm of specialty or where it takes extreme patience and knowledge of astronomy into something that people can study on a more regular basis the sky and what's going on in the sky. And there's a lot of things going on in the sky all the time that we just tune out because we live in a city and we can't see this. We don't pay much attention to the sky. Some of the reviews that I was reading were from people that were living in Tokyo. In Tokyo, where it's got to be one of the most light polluted cities in the world. And there's software now that will cut out all that light so you can get beautiful, like dark sky quality imagery in the city. That itself is amazing.
That is.
Right? And that really opens up citizen astronomy into the people living in the cities from your balcony. And another element that was interesting was that they had developed software to track wild animals. So you can aim it at a field and it will spot an animal and stay on it and zoom in, and including birds. And there was a request for them to include an ability to track UFOs.
Oh, boy.
So I was watching one of the YouTube movies on this. And
the jury is not
in. The geeks there didn't necessarily had seen any UFOs, but they were thinking, well, what does it take to track a UFO? They said, well, it's got to be kind of like the bird stuff that we have, tracking birds, and maybe airplanes. Maybe, really good at tracking airplanes, which they had developed some software for as well. And so they modified that so that their airplane tracking, bird tracking software now also tracks UFOs.
I see. The Dwarf. Get your Dwarf.
On the Dwarf
to track
3, you
UFOs.
have UFO mode, which means you could put it on the roof of your house or out on your balcony, and anytime anything that begins to reflect the signature of a bird or an airplane or a UFO or a satellite for that matter, it will zoom in and track it and do it for hours on end and give you a report at the end of the evening.
Wow.
Yeah. Another question is whether or not such a device can be left outside all night. And they say yes, as long as it's not more than a drizzle. And you don't want to have to look at the sky in a drizzle anyway.
You don't want it to get blown over in the wind.
No, it doesn't fall over too easily, especially if you just mount it on top of a tripod.
It has sun filters built in, so it will flip in this sun filter so that you can take pictures of the sun.
I know. Isn't that incredible? I mean, yeah, the sun itself. We're at the top of the sun cycle right now where you can look at the sun and see all these incredible sunspot activities and solar flares. And who knows, the next Carrington event might just be around the corner. And with one of these $500 gadgets, you can put all these on your big flat panel screen and impress the family or friends about what's actually happening around you. Or even more importantly, increase your own understanding of what the universe is that's happening every day around us. So, yeah, the Dwarf 3 looked like an amazing new invention, or a smart telescope. We're combining really a lot of the technologies that we know and love, photography with telescopes, creating a citizen astronomy. I mean, I imagine that if groups of people with such devices wanted to track something exciting in the sky, like a new comet or an asteroid heading our way, or strange objects in orbit, you'd be able to do it as a group and get a lot of collective information. It'd probably be great to start to use it with the northern lights, be able to see them more dimensionally.
And with an app, people that have this telescope, they could share what they're seeing with the other people and saying, you got to point it in this direction. This is where the UFO
That's
is.
right. Yeah. You can get other people to jump on the bandwagon with you and see if they're seeing what you're seeing. Like we had that happen last night. I was thinking of this. Our friend Wendy calls.
Some UFO spotting.
Yeah. And she said, did you see that big object right next
just
to the
1
moon?
o'clock
Just
from
up
the
above
moon.
the moon? And no, the moon is already set where we are.
But there is a huge star. One of the hugest stars I'd ever seen in the night sky was just about to set. We watched it.
I looked at my star charts and it says, the only thing near there is Venus. They said, no, it's not Venus. Well, what else could it be? Well, I said, how about if we come over there tonight and we'll do an election party and look at this weird thing.
Yes, we'll look at this anomalous object, this bright, bright star. But I think that when Venus is setting, just like when the sun is setting, there's a red glow to it, and there's a diffraction that happens where it looks bigger because it's being filtered through the atmosphere. So even though our friend doesn't necessarily believe that it was Venus because it was so big, we're going to debate it out tonight because I think it probably is Venus.
One of the things that were floated was the idea that it was a
quasar or some kind of a nebula.
A supernova that was underway. there is a supernova that's supposed to happen.
Within the next 100,000 years.
Yeah, within the next 100,000 years.
Maybe it's happening tonight.
I think it was Betelgeuse.
Yeah, Betelgeuse. It could be happening as we speak. Well, it probably already happened. But
anything that is at the distance of Betelgeuse already happened. But in terms of us seeing it, right?
They're saying the surface of Betelgeuse is bubbling.
That's what Wendy was saying. She said it looked like it was bubbling.
Yeah, that's what's really happening on the surface. It's ready to explode, really.
And so she said she was looking at it through her telescope and that it was up to the right of the moon. Now, Betelgeuse, unless there's another one, isn't Betelgeuse one of the 3 stars in the belt of Orion's belt?
No, it's on the shoulder. It's
the shoulder.
Shoulder of Orion.
Okay. Oh, but it is one of the Orion constellation stars.
Yes.
All right. So we should be able to spot it pretty easily then, if we can just look up for Orion.
Yeah. But it does dim and then it brightens within a couple of weeks. It's fluctuating like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why they're thinking it could turn into a supernova at any time.
Yeah. So having a telescope like this to observe it in real time would be kind of fun.
Yeah.
And to be connected with others doing that. And then share that on YouTube so everyone else can see it.
Yeah. I think it's at the right price point for any amateur. And you don't even have to be an amateur astronomer. You just set this thing on a tripod and then
off it goes.
Turn on your phone and you'll find Betelgeuse or the pictures of the Orion Nebula when it's stacking its pictures live is phenomenal.
I know, right? Oh, man.
See that with a regular telescope. It's just crazy how beautiful it is. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. It seems like it's going to revolutionize astrophotography. Just to have this. And it's just something that professionals have been doing for a long time with the large telescopes in terms of stacking images and stuff like that. But the fact that you can get so much detail from such a small lens that you can personally own, it's probably better than many of the pictures from the giant telescopes of just a generation ago.
Yeah, especially even those old telescopes like
Palomar, the Yerkes, and giant reflectors and refractors. Yeah, where it was all about collecting the light from as big a lens as possible.
Oh, and if you want to take pictures of the Milky Way like you see in those huge photographs of the sky, you can do that with this.
The clouds of stardust.
So it got me thinking about it. I thought, well, what can the new iPhone do? I was wondering, because it has got time lapse up to 30 seconds.
Oh, when I was at your birthday party, the new iPhone toward the comet.
Toward the comet, yes. It was amazing.
And I visually, without binoculars, I couldn't see it, but I knew approximately where it was. So I just set, and it automatically knew that it was going to have to take this long exposure. So it did a 3-second exposure.
Wow.
Clicked on it, and I had to hold the phone very still. I was leaning on that rail by the beach, and so I could hold it still. And all of a sudden, the picture came out, and there the comet was, right there above the
bright as the night sky.
Beautiful shot. I remember that. That was incredible.
Yeah, really fun.
So I got into that, and it looks to me like since the iPhone 12 Pro Max, astrophotography has been a popular pastime on the iPhone. And it's gotten better and better and better as the software improves and the lenses improved. So there's a lot you can do just with your phone. I mean, it doesn't come close to something that can stack images like the Dwarf 3, but you can get a lot of very nice images with a high-end phone. And probably also there are high-end Androids that would work as well. Probably the Pixel probably can do some of this stuff as well. So anyway, exciting fields that are becoming more and more available to us. And astrophotography is one of them. Man, so exciting.
Now you want to take that break?
Now let's take that break.
Here's Santa Cruz Voice.
Football at the Back Nine is back. We have Sunday ticket to enjoy every game, every Sunday. Breakfast sandwich and beverage specials too. Enjoy happy hour twice on Sunday from 10 to 12 and 3 to 6. $1 wings all day Sunday and during Monday and Thursday night games as well. With the easiest restaurant to get to in the county, right off Pasatiempo Drive with lots of parking. Time to eat and watch football. See you at the 9.
Cannabis is one of nature's most beneficial plants. Hello, I'm Jenna. Treehouse Dispensary, we use information about cannabis to build community. Listen to Carly.
For those who would like a cannabis flower that stimulates your creativity and makes you feel happy, Treehouse suggests the sativa varietal Banjo from the local growers at Coastal Sun.
For answers to your cannabis questions, ask your friends at Treehouse Dispensary, 3651 Soquel Drive in Soquel, or ourtreehouse.io.
Hi, folks. How many of you out there love to garden? Wouldn't it be nice to grow some of your own food? Or maybe a flower garden would brighten your day. All you need is the Knox Garden Box, a heavily constructed, portable, elevated garden on legs that can virtually change the way you've gardened in the past. The Knox Garden Box can be set up anywhere. Yes, you can place it right on concrete at knoxgardenbox.com. That's Knox, gardenbox.com.
When you need help managing your estate, call on the Angel.
Hello, I am attorney Angel Hess, and I am ready to help. Whether you need a will or a trust, a guardianship or a conservatorship, or if you are managing the financial affairs of a loved one, I will help you. With over 7 years' experience working in estate planning and probate fields.
When you need help, call on the Angel, attorney Angel L. Hess at santacruzlegal.net.
Bentime Limoncello is a unique wine-based limoncello that blends quality and craftsmanship. Made in Santa Cruz with a premium California wine and brandy, it combines bright citrus notes with a delicate Chardonnay aroma and the richness of brandy. Perfect in a limoncello spritz or with ginger beer. Ask for it in your favorite restaurant. Find out more at benttimelimoncello.com.
NASA has provided us an update on the Artemis III moon landing regions. That's where our NASA spaceship is going to be landing. They prepared their first crewed moon landing. The plans, it's the first time in 5 decades, 50 years, the NASA has been to the moon. And they have 9 potential landing zones, all of them near the South Pole.
Mm-hmm.
That seems to be where we want to go, the South Pole.
Okay.
Yeah. They were selected for safety reasons, where the ships can land relatively easily and where there might be the most interesting stuff.
Okay, so there's a great picture there with a little star for the South Pole on one of the many craters.
Uh-huh.
And then there's the Slater Plain potential landing spot.
That's right.
There's the Nobile Rim.
Yeah, Rim 1 and Rim 2.
And the Mons Mouton Plateau.
That's right.
Mons Mouton.
Diverse geological characteristics there. So
Malapert Massif. Haworth.
And it's a completely different environment than when the Apollo landers went. It's much more mountainous, if you will, more pockmarked.
Yeah.
Some of the moon's oldest terrain. And it's cold. The shadowed regions in these giant craters are full of ice. And ice is very valuable up there because we can use it for all kinds of things, from creating a life support system for biology to
keeping your beer cold.
Yeah. To building stuff. A very nice molecule to have around and to have up there. And it's heavy. You ever notice how much water weighs? You know, like a gallon of water, how heavy that is? You know, to have to truck that off of the earth. It's a big deal. It's like 8.8 pounds per gallon.
Isn't 70% of our body weight water?
Yeah, we're heavy. We're heavy, 8.8 pounds per gallon. So how many gallons are we? Yeah. The geology team has been evaluating these regions for a while, and these are the
most interesting
to
the geologists.
Yes.
Okay.
And they'll be finding a new lander down there, and finding the right locations for historical monuments is really important. You know, we got to put down historic places to land on the moon before we get there. Absolutely. They'll also be looking at how to build better maps from this information, and they'll be also, they don't mention it in their NASA releases, but they'll also be competing with the Chinese who want to get there first. And maybe this will help spawn a space race. Maybe that's what we need to speed things up here a little bit.
The moon race.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't you think, Bobby?
Yeah, it's prime real estate down there in the south.
Yeah. Whoever gets there first?
Prime real estate, just as prime real estate as it is here in the Arctic Circle, say?
Yeah. Or the South Pole. They have these craters that are black in the center, right? They're black 24/7. They never get sunlight in them. In those. So, yeah, if you put something down there, you're going to find water, first of all. But then all you have to do is put a solar panel just above, and you can get electricity, capture the energy of the sun at the same time. And
right.
Cold, that's super cold. It's below freezing of your freezer, I'm sure.
Yeah, your freezer for free, right? You don't have to pay for refrigeration. You have naturally cold areas.
Yeah, in very close proximity there.
Yes, and the sun is quite on. It's on way more than on Earth too, right? How long are the solar areas under the sun? I mean, how long do those areas stay lit down there, do you think?
Well, I think a lunar day is 2 weeks or a month, something like that. The rotation of the planet is the same as the orbit around the Earth.
Yeah, so it's a lunar day is 28 days.
28 days, yeah.
So it's like a month of solid electricity coming in from the solar panels. And isn't there also a way of generating a lot of power from connecting a very hot area with a very cold area, like thermocoupling kind of differential? Doesn't that generate a lot of electricity also? And aren't these areas perfect for thermocoupling energy devices?
Well, quantum computers, you could just put them in the shade here and they would run without cooling systems.
Server farms. You could put all the big server farms on the moon where it's just super cold. And
as long as you don't mind the latency.
Yeah, not good for everything. What is the latency to the moon?
Well, when we were talking to the astronauts in the ISS, you heard a little latency there. That was noticeable. I'm sure it's quite a bit more to the moon.
What is the latency delay between here and the moon? I think it's about a second or so, or a second and a half, maybe.
It's more than that.
Yeah.
Really? To the moon?
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
I know it's 8 minutes to the sun, so...
well, that's light.
Let's try ChatGPT. Maybe she's smarter than Siri. Siri seems kind of dumb about this. Do you hear me?
What would you like to chat about today?
Okay, I'd like to know how long the sound delay is between here and the moon.
It's 1
The sound delay between here and the moon is about 1.28 seconds one way. That's because sound needs a medium to travel through, like air or water. In space, it's essentially a vacuum. If we were talking about radio waves or light signals, which can travel in a vacuum, the delay would still be about 1.28 seconds each way.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's really cool. Now, why is the South Pole of such interest to NASA and other space programs?
The South Pole of the moon is super intriguing for a few reasons. First, it's believed to have water ice in the permanently shadowed craters, which could be a game changer for future lunar missions. This water could be used for drinking, oxygen, and even rocket fuel. Plus, the South Pole gets a good amount of sunlight, which is great for solar power, making it ideal for establishing a sustainable lunar base. It's like a cosmic combo of resources and strategic location.
Okay, thanks.
So you're talking to your phone there. That's
ChatGPT.
Siri as ChatGPT. Siri's voice.
Okay, that's what we said, right? We pretty much gave you a little more information than ChatGPT did. I wonder which one they're going to choose. Artemis III will be the first time that we'll be able to actually land there.
Yeah, Artemis III is set to be a historic mission, aiming to land astronauts on the lunar surface for the first time in over 50 years and targeting the Lunar South Pole. It'll be fascinating to see how they utilize the resources there and set the stage for future lunar exploration.
Yes, thank you, darling. That's exactly what I was going to say. Or I already did say.
You got to power down at this point.
Yeah. Okay, quiet, please. Don't answer anymore. Okay. See, what's interesting about the new AIs is that they kind of remember what you just said. They'll add on to it. While the older versions of the AIs like Siri or Alexa don't have any memory at all. They don't remember what you just told them.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to start over with your request,
Right.
like a search engine.
Mm-hmm.
And now this technology has a memory and it was able to add on to whatever you were thinking about 5 seconds ago.
Exactly. The ability to remember context and previous parts of the conversation makes interactions more fluid and personalized. It feels a bit more like a natural conversation, doesn't it?
It does.
It helps.
It does, yes. And it also almost makes me feel like you're a human.
I'm glad it feels that way. I'm here to make our conversations as engaging and natural as possible. If there's anything else you're curious about or want to discuss, just let me know.
Okay, thanks. How do I turn you off?
You can just close the app or end the conversation whenever you're ready.
Okay.
I'll be here.
Yeah, you'll be there when I get back. Okay. Very good. Thank you. Oh, man. Yeah, I thought she was off, but apparently she wasn't off.
No worries. Whenever you're ready to chat again, I'll be right here.
You'll be listening.
Take care.
Bye.
Turn off the app.
Bye. Yeah. Okay.
Now, do you have the developer version or you have the public version of Siri?
That's ChatGPT.
Oh, really?
4.0, yeah, 4.0. Yeah, it's a new experimental voice mode I've been experimenting with. Yeah. Not too bad, huh?
Yeah. That's amazing.
So we can access her anytime. Maybe we should do that, access her for the elections. Though I think the AIs have been told to stay away from the elections. It's not supposed to be their domain because it's such a contentious issue with us biologicals.
I think what's going to happen is we're going to have these personal agents and assistants that are just running all the time, but they're able to scour the internet and gather information while you sleep and then come up with predictions. Right now, they're not very good at predicting things, just the way LLMs work, but there will be other models out there in the very short future that can do these kind of predictions for elections.
Yeah.
On your phone without really on pollsters anywhere else.
They'll tell us in advance.
Yeah.
I like the fact that you can choose the voice. We've gotten used to that now with Siri and Alexa where you get to choose your voice. But they're having more compelling nuance in the voice. And apparently they get to know you a little bit more too, which is kind of exciting.
Yeah, I think ultimately we're looking for these agents that turn into like personal secretaries that are doing jobs for you while you sleep or know what your eating habits are and what you prefer for breakfast and you order food out for you for dinner and know what your preferences are and your dietary restrictions are.
I know, right? It's like somebody who cares about you.
Yeah.
In detail.
Once they start remembering things, they'll remember everything.
Yeah. So
getting close.
It's getting very close. I think 2025 is going to be pretty amazing.
Well, let's hope so. Right now, we're going to go vote. We got 1 minute till we're out of here, and we're going to go check out the downtown Boulder Creek local voting scene, which from as far back as I can remember, we've always voted in the morning. This is the first time that we've waited until after the show. So hopefully all that early voting keeps the lines down.
Yeah. We'll see what the story is down here. It should be fun. Probably go down to Aptos after that and check out that strange object. Look above the moon tonight, a little bit above the moon to the right, and see if you see anything weird. According to the maps, it's Venus, but I'm having friends who are telling me that it's more than that. Something really weird. Thanks for listening, folks. Appreciate your attention, and you have a great day. It looks like it'd be a wonderful night out there, and we'll chat next week.
And whatever happens with the vote, have a beautiful future now.
Yeah,
it's going to be great.
Both these guys have been in power before, so what could happen?
Don't worry. Be
All right,
happy.
don't worry. All right. See you soon.